I set up an account years ago and I never used it.
Michael,
I used it for a while.
So I guess I'm on there.
I stopped
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to
Oh, we live?
a special meeting of the Planning Board, emergency meeting this evening for January 10th, 2025. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I will do the roll call of members. Michael Croto, Chair.
Jared O'Connell, Vice Chair.
Jesse No, alternate.
Letha Riley, member.
Russell Blanchett, member.
Travis Tucker, member.
Welcome. We have with us this evening Jamin Carr from NRPC. Welcome. And John McKibben, our Planning Board Administrator. I don't think we expected to see each other so soon, but under the circumstances that came to light, as you may recall from the last time, we had a warrant or a proposed warrant article that was brought before us regarding the building code. There was discussion at the last meeting, and the board sought to table it because there was not enough information. I had reached out to Kim Kleiner the next day, who was our town administrator, and she explained to me that the article that was being presented regarding the building code had been vetted by town council and had been worked on with the Board of Selectmen. So she suggested that perhaps we revisit this tonight, given that there's sort of a short window regarding to put on for public hearing. So I agreed that we should have a meeting tonight. Unfortunately, I know it's a Friday, but unfortunately, I think we have to address this. It seemed to be an issue that needs to be addressed. Before I get into that, Jesse, did you want to vote as a member tonight since you are the alternate member?
Yes.
And Jeremy is not here.
Yes.
So you'll vote in his place this evening, so we'll put you as an alternate member. I'll start with public input on non-agenda items. Any items not on the agenda this evening that would like to comment on for public input? Okay. Hearing none, I will close public input on non-agenda items, and I'll go to number one, a work session for proposed warrant article for Litchfield Building Code. The text available at the Selectmen's Viewing Room, New Town Hall hours. I'm going to ask Ms. Kleiner to come forward and speak to the article. Good evening.
good evening. So first, I must apologize. Tuesday evening, I had a family engagement, and apparently I thought we were, this was better known than it was. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history. Back when Mr. Blackwell was our building inspector, the lawyers from the NHMA, New Hampshire Municipal Association, contacted me and asked me about our building code and asked me to take a look at it. This is not an issue that is just Litchfield. This is an issue that is statewide. So back a few years ago, around 2021, 2022, state legislature adopted the state building code. That is the building code for all municipalities within the state of New Hampshire. What the NHMA found was that many towns had not updated their building code to reference that code. And that is what Mr. Blackwell and I found as well. So you'll see throughout the existing building code this reference to BOCA. That's the one issue. So we needed to update the code to point to the state building code. And it really, so it takes out a lot of language, right, out of our current building code. Just there's the state codes. If the state codes change, that's through the legislature. That's a process, and we will update it as and when that happens. Again, a town can't have something that is different than the state building code unless they go through a committee that the state has set up and they receive permission. As far as we know, 12 towns have done so, 12 towns have been denied. So, not an easy process. So that was the first piece. Out comes Boca, in goes the state building code. The second piece was when you set up your building code and you are setting up a warrant for your building code, you need to always have 4 pieces. Even if you're only changing one, you need to reference all 4 again. The building code, who's the enforcer, who's the appeals, and who sets the fees. Those are the 4 items you must have. So you'll see the enforcement, which really hasn't changed that much. There's just some language as to giving the building inspector reports to the Board of Selectmen, and he is the enforcer and what that enforcement entails. That's all that section is about. And the lawyers wrote that section, and so we took what the lawyers wrote and compared it to our existing and made the appropriate changes to incorporate their language. The appeals. Let's go with that third part, because that, again, is a little different. So the state statute says that a town may set up a local building code of appeals. Okay, that would be, the selectmen would appoint 5 individuals that sit and hear people that have a problem with the building inspector's interpretation. That's an issue that the Board of Selectmen have to think about whether or not they want to do that. I think that's very difficult to do in a small municipality like this, where many of our very active residents are contractors or in the trades of some sort, so they would constantly be recusing themselves. And what if it's their case? And I think it just gets messy if you do that. The second is the ZBA. By statute, it's a ZBA. What we've had happening is people pointing these individuals to the selectmen. There's nothing in the statute that says that it's automatically the selectmen. If you don't have a ZBA, it can be the selectmen. If your town's so small that all you have is a select board, then the statute says it can go there. But if you have a zoning board of adjustment, it's a zoning board of adjustment if you don't have a building code of appeals. The third option is really the best, in my opinion. Send them to the state, because now the state has a building code of appeals, and it's the state code, let the state decide. So there's your third option. So all 3 are clearly laid out in the new. I don't think the selectmen, just from conversation, and we're going to talk about it Monday night at the selectmen meeting, I don't think they're going to go with the first. So if they went to the ZBA was uncomfortable, we'd point them to the state. And that's how we would work that. So that's the language that you see there. And then the fourth item, fees don't change. The Board of Selectmen set the fees. As you all know, they set new fees just this past May. They're properly noticed, and that's the process for that. There was some question Tuesday night as to the ZBA versus the Board of Selectmen. And so I just want to make it clear, in 1988, the town had a warrant article.
Warrant
That-
Article 11.
Yes, and that warrant article said it was the zoning board of adjustment, and it passed overwhelmingly.
647 to 148.
Correct. Yeah. So it's not the Board of Selectmen, and I think, by the voters of Litchfield, they adopted that. I understand if the zoning board is not comfortable, then let's point them to the state and let the state hear our cases. So really, that's it in a nutshell. But we've been through this probably for about 9 months. It did take an incredible amount of research because our lawyers weren't comfortable drafting this until we researched every warrant article that had ever passed on the building code for the town of Litchfield. So thank you to Mr. Blackwell, and thank you to Donna Burrell in the Selectman's office. That took a lot of time, but we do now have a listing of all those warrant articles, and the lawyers are happy that we have done this correctly. That's where we are.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
I have a question.
Yep.
So if there's already a warrant article that's on the books, why are we being asked to do another one? Is it just 2.2, the new terminology, the new group at the state level?
Great question. Because back in 1988, when that warrant article passed, there was no option listed on it to have a local building code of appeals. So again, it's the three. You can have the local building code of appeals. If not, it goes to ZBA. If not ZBA, you can point it to the state. The state building code of appeals wasn't in force in 1988 either. So there's other options, and we're just making sure that we lay them all out. Doesn't
So this is a
necessarily.
more clarified warrant article, effectively?
It is.
That's more clear?
It is. And the real important piece of this warrant article, because you always list all four pieces in the warrant article for the building code, regardless of if they're changing or not, you list all four. The really important piece is that first piece, because BOCA does not exist. That you can't have a local building code. You have to point to the state.
So the impetus for this is to become current and not appear as if we're dragging our feet? Is that,
And to not appear to contractors as if we are using a local code which can no longer be enforced.
Now, going back to the 1988 article, amend the building code by adding new section 170 in order to designate the Litchfield Zoning Board of Adjustment as the Building Code Board of Appeals as required by RSA 673:1. That says to me they were aware that there was a need for a Building Code Board of Appeals, and this warrant article being accepted designates the ZBA as that authority.
And so it seems what happened, if you look at every issue of the building code after that warrant article, the regulations were never updated to include that. So it passed and it never went in our regulations. So you'll see on all those, I think, Jay, you were referencing a different date. We actually found one after the date you referenced the other night. None of them have, in the current doesn't either.
I was unable to find any language of
Yeah.
the regulation at all.
It was never updated.
It's a good thing that
Happens.
it's a good thing the vote was recorded, so at least we know that this occurred.
Thank heavens for town reports.
Yep. Spent the afternoon going through old town reports.
Thank you to a former selectman. I have a bookcase of every town report back to, I think, 1960.
I found a digital archive going back even further than that.
Yeah, we always go to the UNH repository, right?
Going-
Yeah. But I have the nice hard copies if anyone wants to come in and see them.
I'm curious if it's already on the books. Yes, I understand that it hasn't been, the regulations haven't been updated with the language, but that wouldn't, it having passed earlier supersede anything that's come afterward? I mean, why do you need to go through the warrant process again?
Because when you write the warrant article for the building code, to update the building code, you always include all four pieces.
Yeah.
And now, if the zoning board of adjustment is not comfortable hearing a case, or say there's a case that comes forward and they just, sometimes you need to be a little bit more knowledgeable about these things than our current zoning board may be comfortable with, now you have the option of sending them to this state board.
Okay, so there's an additional feature
Yes,
here. that
there
you
is an
want as well
additional
that you're
feature.
asking us for. Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that was where I was missing then.
Right, and I think that's covered in the new language, 170.01. It does introduce the
I see
the
Jack
state.
thinking.
So once this, assuming this passes, will there be any further updates to the regulations beyond this ordinance?
So, yes, so if the state, there's the reference to the 2018 International Building Code, if the state legislature adopted additional, we would need to, change that section. Again, you'd put all four sections in, but yes, we would need to update it as the state does.
Will we need to put that on a warrant article every time that changes?
Every time, it's a zone, it's part of your zoning, every time.
Is it possible to reference something that references something that is always up to date rather than having to inline it in a way that makes it so we have to change it every time?
So, yes, but there was some concern with doing so that if you just said the state building code, you may not give people enough information to point them to the right editions of the International Building Code, because there's several different versions
Just by
of it.
reference to RSA 155A, that should be sufficient.
If they go back to RSA 1, yes, because the RSA will always be updated, right, with the
So
legislature's
if our
vote.
building code references RSA 155A rather than having any specific language calling out a particular code, that would send the anybody researching this to the state to catch the latest version that the state has authorized.
We could,
Jim,
we could.
just add that on section 100-02. It says that the energy consumption 155A is
Sorry.
Yes.
It does cover that.
So,
And ratify. That's where it gets changed.
so what you do is in 100-02, see where it says the state building code, which references the International Building Code 2018, you'd have to remove everything that after which references, right? And just leave it as RSA 155A10. Because RSA 155A10 would be updated every time the legislature passes a new.
Right.
You could do
By
that.
reference, then we don't have to go through the effort of maintaining this as a constant update cycle. Whenever the state does something, we then have to respond by doing this, going through these exercises where we have a Friday night meeting.
But that's
Because,
not
oh my
giving
God,
I
the
what is
public
this?
enough information just by putting a reference to 155A. I think you need all this verbiage in there, and I don't think that the state's gonna be changing
They don't tend to. I think it was
too often.
3 years ago that they. It's not every year.
The state electrical code is rewritten every 3 years.
Every 3 years.
Every 3 years.
Yeah.
And that changes quite a bit of the big deal.
And just to follow up on Joan's comment, I think one of the things that you see if you read through it is the different dates. New Hampshire isn't always adopting the most recent version. There's been some controversy, a different state. Massachusetts might be different, so I
Right.
think putting the specific date is valuable, I think, as a guide.
There's a newer residential code than the state has codified that has energy performance standards that the folks in Concord didn't think were appropriate for our needs at this time, which is why 155A, I believe, is our best reference in our document. So as the state makes changes, they would be reflected in the RSA. We just reference the RSA.
So looking at how it's proposed in section 100.02, the regulation will still not be incorrect when it goes out of date because it includes it as amended. However, the people reading it will always have to check 155A colon 10 because they cannot assume our regulations are up to date. So the risk of leaving it in there is out of date information, but it won't be technically wrong because it says as amended.
Right, where currently, we're technically wrong.
Yeah.
And have been, as with a lot of other towns. This is not new to Litchfield, so.
I guess that would be my next question, Ms. Kleiner. Are other towns doing the same thing, or they
Yeah.
just haven't had this problem?
No, other towns, so our municipal council
Yeah.
represents many other municipalities, and we've all been given the same language to make the changes. The NHMA is working with other towns that aren't with our council, because technically they're being asked, all of us are being asked to update.
Okay, so we're not doing anything out of turn that any other or municipalities being asked to do.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
working with another town that's doing exactly the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, my research, a few other towns have recently made similar changes, enacted them. We're just catching up.
Okay.
Now, I've asked the
Yeah.
question,
If you see anything, mark it
and
up.
which I still haven't gotten an answer for, what happens if it fails?
The 11th.
I believe that the state, I mean, the state code is still the state. code.
Right, so, I,
State code.
state code's a state code, but,
That's a supersede. It's like the RSA.
No, I know that, but.
yeah.
They supersede ours.
It just won't solve your issues around
Us being-
appeals and.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, so,
Starting on Wednesday.
but hopefully, everyone understands, and maybe if we make it clear to our residents that it isn't changing anything, it's cleaning it up, right? It's,
If we leave the inline references, we're going to have to be very diligent about updating it every 3 years, unlike the past few decades, I guess, where we have had the invalid references.
well, my concern was that, and believe me, I'm not a building code expert, so this is not, I'm sure the gentlemen sitting behind me, all three of them, know much more than, my concern was, would a resident think that, oh, we've been following this BOCA code, and now they're trying to change the building code on us, and not know that the state building code is currently in effect, regardless of what's in our,
Yeah, we should definitely propose something either as proposed or minor changes because we definitely want to get rid of those old references.
right.
So, yeah, the question is, do we want all the inline references or not? And
I mean, I think in the voter guide, we can give that clarification,
yeah, I
so
think-
that people understand it's not changing the building code, it's just changing the reference in our document.
Is it possible before this gets passed, if it gets passed, is it possible to appeal to the state still?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
this will at least help clarify. So this is all just clarifying things.
Right.
So we'll have to make that language clear in the warrant article wording.
Well, Laura Gandia is not here, and she's the chair of the zoning board, right?
Yes,
So,
correct.
I mean, she would have to give input as well, right? But she'll have that opportunity in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, during a
Well,
public
I think
hearing.
tonight is our decision as a planning board to move this to a public hearing.
Got it.
And so if we did that, then you would have members of the public come in to comment and to provide input.
Okay.
But we would not be able to make any substantive changes after that next hearing.
Yeah.
It's
So
sort
it's
of the-
adopting as it
yeah,
is.
deadline.
So I guess, so I would say, if you want to remove the references, then I think it would read, the town of Litchfield has adopted the New Hampshire Building Code or State Building Code, which references various international building codes as ratified by the legislature in accordance with RSA 155-A:10.
Various building codes and
100
national electrical
02.
code,
Page one.
I'm sorry, what?
which references various building codes and national electrical code.
You could say that too.
Let's see, either way.
References, various.
Yeah, I think removing the references might be in our best interest, because I can just look online, find newhampshire.com's website, and it lists everything there.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't, we aren't doing a favor. I think we risk stale information if we leave it in. And looking at it, the RSA listed on the New Hampshire Gov website doesn't appear to be the same as those in this warrant article, or this proposed change. Like, it includes 2021 for International Building Code and International Existing Building Code and Mechanical Code and Plumbing Code and Residential Code, all 2021. Whereas all of these reference, okay,
Is
so.
that proposed or is that adopted?
This is just, I don't know exactly, but I would expect them to not list it on their state fire building codes website if it wasn't adopted.
That's correct.
If we says various building, plumbing, mechanical, energy,
Swimming pools, bars, all that stuff.
various codes, or just various codes, I mean,
I think it'd be easier to just say the New Hampshire Building Site, which references various international building codes and the National Electric Code as ratified by the legislature.
And so basically remove the years, right?
Correct.
Everything, removing all of the other references, just saying we've adopted the New Hampshire bill. So, again, if you want to do that, I'd
Yeah.
say the town of Litchfield has adopted the New Hampshire Building Code or State Building Code, which references various international building codes and the National Electric Code as ratified by the legislature in accordance with RSA 155-A:10.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
that's,
that.
I think that's the best way forward.
They're saying various international codes.
Does any members of the public wish to comment?
So, oh, sorry.
Guys?
So as a electrician, mechanical contractor, fire alarm, like if I just looked at this verbiage here, it doesn't mention anything about fire alarm codes. I
And
don't,
it's published by the New Hampshire Fire Protection Association.
that's the NFPA. The NFPA writes all those codes.
That's correct.
But it doesn't have NFPA 54, it doesn't have NFPA, which is natural gas, NFPA 55, which is propane. It doesn't have the fire alarm codes. So it's almost this, it doesn't mean those codes don't exist. They still
It
exist.
still exists.
Yeah, so I think being vague will clarify that many
Exactly.
things exist.
So someone could look at this and say, oh, there's no fire alarm code in the state of, in the town of Litchfield. There is none.
Yeah, which would be a
You've
very
locked
wrong
yourself
interpret-
into this words.
Yeah, we don't want people to misinterpret it.
So, and like, for example, we're just adopting 22, the National Electric Code rewrote in 23, it's gonna rewrite in 26. State of New Hampshire, for some reason, puts a 2-year delay on those codes. I don't know why.
yeah,
So
okay.
the thing with this, where you have where the town has a problem, where I see the town has a problem, is not with a developer, because when we had, like, for instance, when I did Calawa Court, we had a building design by an architect, he did it all. When we went to Rose Meadow, we know that the codes changed, so we send that, go back to the same architect, say, you need to update our plans, because there's new codes. Now, we have tons of liability, so we have to make sure, as a developer, that we have to comply with the new codes. So where the problem is when the homeowner wants to put an addition on his house, and he hires Joe Blow the carpenter to put his addition on, and he's not up to speed on all the codes. That's where the problem is. You know, like when I said the other night, I've never went to an appeal on a building inspector, ever. Because if we went to the state, you know what the state inspector's gonna say? You better work it out with him, with your building inspector. Because if you don't, your life could be miserable for a long time to come. And that's how that works. I mean, I'm just plain and simple, that's how it works.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
And I think my concern is, like, I talked to Jeff Richards, who's the mechanical inspector in Nashua, and they have this exists in Nashua. But it is not people voted in by, it's architects, engineers, contractors. There is one person of public input. But if we just put in, you know, like you said, Joe Blow, people that don't know the code, the National Electric Code is written on a pretty high level. You don't want someone who's never read that code trying to make it a determination if the inspector's right or wrong.
Yeah.
And I go to the state all the time when I disagree with the inspector. I do go. I end up doing what the inspector wants because the state inspector says exactly what Rick said, work it out or you'll be miserable.
There's two sides.
But we have an appeal process in place already. It already exists.
So that's the only thing that myself as a developer disagree with, I'm never coming to an appeal. Okay, we're gonna work it out in the field. Is the 5-member board. You're never gonna get the 5-member board. You can't, I mean, look how hard time you have keeping a planning board or getting 5 members on a zoning board to show up. So we're not gonna get 5 people. We need to go, if we disagree with the building inspector, we need to go to the state. So that he can tell us to work it out with the building inspector. Same thing with the homeowner. That's what they need to do. And that's the best, the easiest solution. That doesn't need to go to the selectmen because there's no one on the selectmen qualified.
Yeah.
There's no one on the zoning board qualified. And just think about it. If you guys were on the zoning board, are you gonna go against the building inspector in your town? If he, disagree? Probably not.
Probably not.
So why waste the 30 days to go there? Just tell them to go to the state.
Yeah, where the panel of experts resides.
Exactly.
Right.
This language gives us the ability, gives the zoning board the ability to punt to the state, right?
Yes.
It does.
But you wasted 30 days.
But not punt,
Yeah.
but not punt to the select board. And so
Correct.
right out there right now in the community, there seems to be this misinformation that it's the select board.
Nope.
And it isn't.
Well, out
That-
there in the
that-
community, working with bad information, it's
So
a
we
matter
need-
of record. The ZBA is designated as the Board of Appeals, amended March 1988,
Right.
We just
So-
need to get rid of that and let them go
to the state.
That's my opinion. I mean, that's up to you guys. But
Yeah, but what you're saying is different than what this says. I mean, this gives that ultimately an option, but,
no,
you
you
know.
have to just.
The chair would just have to, yeah.
Write it.
I mean,
Yeah. So are you suggesting, Ms. Kleiner, that we keep the zoning board option in here with the ability to punt to the state, or you?
yes, because that's what the state statute says.
Oh, I see.
Just a follow.
So you really can't bypass that step.
Okay.
Is it a may or a shall? The town may or shall put to the zoning board or to an appeals board?
You shall go to the
shall.
ZBA
If you don't have a
And
building board.
if you don't have a building code. So If you don't have that local board, which I don't believe the Board of Selectmen are going that route, but that's their decision. If you don't have that, then you shall go to the the zoning board of adjustment. And if it's not ratified, figured out there, you go to the state.
So we're,
So,
we have to do that.
yeah, just point to, and if the zoning board is not, does not feel qualified, and I do think it puts the zoning board in an awkward position, working with the building inspector or the code enforcement, right, because you can be, both. I think it puts them in an awkward situation to rule on something that they might not be qualified to the point. You're dealing with a lot of technical information that they just might not feel comfortable.
So as it's written, it says shall go to the zoning board of adjustment. So that means that if the ZBA does not wish to do it, they need to explicitly say that probably for every case.
Right.
Um,
And there aren't that many. I mean, to be honest, I only know of two in the past, 5 or 6 years. So we're not dealing with a lot of issues here.
Mr. Lynch, I think, had a.
Kevin Lynch, a citizen, also a building official for 40 years plus. I've never had an appeals before me. And the reason why is that we deal with the state codes, we deal with the contractors and everything, and the designers and the engineers. 99% of the time, you don't get an appeal. 99. I never had one in my career. There's been 2 conflicts in the short time that I've been gone here that is questionable, okay? I'll just say that they're questionable, I don't wanna go anywhere, okay? Because it gets into people. But all in all, the way it's written, and dealing with Joe, like, I had to deal with him for years. Eric's a good electrician, we differ at times. But I'll contact the state inspector, who enforces the rules, and we'll get the interpretation done, and it's done. Same thing with the plumbing, or HVAC, or heating guys, or structural engineers. We do it like that, it's all done quietly, done with the homeowner, done with the builders, and it rectifies the solution. Because it's all about the situation. It's all about the little the details. I've never had a problem in my life, okay, with this. And Rick knows,
I never did.
he never picked on me that much, okay?
I picked on him.
I
but
know.
Not that much.
We did that in school.
But, to Kevin's point, that it's very well taken, because your building inspector, if they have an issue and the contractor and them are not finding common ground, the building inspector should reach out to the state and get an interpretation.
Yep.
And find out and he or she can do that. So it really shouldn't get to an appeals situation. There's plenty of avenues before it gets to that. But by statute, you have to, whenever you have an enforcement of any type, right, you have to have some type of a way
redress.
for people to appeal it.
Yeah.
Really, with this whole thing, the bottom line is, we're never gonna have if we take that out, there's nothing in any of it that really means doing anything to anybody.
Exactly.
There really isn't. It's just clarifying things, that's all. Doesn't hurt us, doesn't.
I will say this, dealing with lawyers all my life, the attorneys and regarding situations that I come across, I know a couple lawyers here, okay? And they've always says, find a solution. Town council has always said that. And that's half the battle, rectifying the situation. A simple change or educating the person who wants to go this way, but if you did it this way, you'd be all set, and bingo, you're all set. Happens every day. Okay?
Jay, any thoughts?
Oh, I think it makes sense moving it forward. I think as it's written, You could certainly decide to take out the local building board of appeals if you don't think if the town's ever gonna do it. This just gives you the option, so.
Just an option.
Yeah, so, I mean, town council was, and I asked, town council was pretty firm that that's what the statute allows. If you put it, you should leave it in, because that's the state statute. If the board doesn't appoint it, it's mute.
Right.
It stays mute, and I don't believe the selectmen have any intention of creating it.
Yeah, okay. So it seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right, so,
Thank you.
good night.
Good night.
Good night, thank you. So I think the logical next step would be to, obviously, take a vote to, put it to a public hearing. And, have a public hearing on it and, go from there.
What are you gonna do with
As
that,
amended.
section 100.02?
Take out those years,
Yeah, I
right?
think we
Yeah.
can take those out.
Okay.
Changes as
Yeah,
discussed.
exactly.
So move it to public hearing on January 21st as amended.
As amended.
As amended. So
As
is
amended.
anybody entertaining a motion?
Well, hang on, let's make sure that everything else looks like we want it to look when we're bringing this to public hearing.
Yeah, that's our last chance.
Yeah, this is our last chance.
Right, because we can't.
If we make anything substantive after public hearing, we miss the deadline to put this on the ballot. So let's get this right.
I'm glad that we're looking at actual text instead of just the thing we saw last time.
Yeah.
Because this is, getting the details right is important.
Are we saying to remove dates? I used to work as a marketer, and whenever you put dates in, you're already outdated yourself the next year. Are we saying remove, like any
Yeah.
references to 2018?
Yeah, we're going to make it just to various,
International building
Codes
Right.
codes.
and the National Electric Code.
Right on.
Oh,
And that's building, mechanical, plumbing, you got it.
oh, and
No, I think we're taking all those out. We're
Taking
just
all out.
saying
Yeah.
various international building codes and the
Should we-
National Electric Code.
should we say,
It's ratified by the legislature in accordance with RSA.
Correct.
Gonna refer to the code, the state built the building codes.
but I think
Yes.
to,
Yes.
Plural.
Yes. Yes, it's plural.
to make it even clearer, should we add the word all
but I
in
think
there?
then to Mr. Gibbons' points, we're not saying the fire protection.
That's why we're not listing all of those other ones. We're just saying various international building codes. But I believe that the National Electric Code is not an international code, so we're
Correct.
referencing it separately.
Right.
Yeah, that's NFPA 70.
But I don't think the fire alarm code is either, is it?
Yeah,
It's NFPA.
National.
Oh, that's a good point.
So,
So why don't we say,
Could just say
various
various.
international and national building codes?
Okay, that's
There
good.
we are.
Yeah.
okay, and national.
The key is, as ratified by the legislature in accordance with RSA.
Right,
Yes.
Yes,
That's what puts the neat bow on the package.
yes.
yes.
Should we word it something like all national and international codes?
No, not all.
Nope.
No.
We don't want all.
And
So various international building codes, international and national building codes?
Yes, so it's, the town of
Yeah.
Litchfield has adopted the National Building Code or State Building Code, which references various international and national building codes.
Yeah, I think, I
Would we
like that.
say as adopted?
As ratified by the legislature,
in accordance
yeah.
with 155.
With that last sentence,
Yeah,
Right.
you got it.
That puts the burden on the state to maintain the
right.
codes that they believe are relevant. And we're just following their lead on
Right.
whatever
Okay,
codes
so-
are needed.
And then it takes out all this, everything that references the BOCA.
Yep.
And then, so the fee schedule, which was changed in May, that's an attached.
I will say there are some missing spaces in the enforcement section.
Enforcement.
But
Oh,
it's-
yeah, between 08 and 09, I saw that.
Yeah, and also 01.
Oh, it's misnumbered.
Oh, yeah.
1,
Oh, yeah.
3.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
What happened
We'll
to
want to
two?
correct that.
Okay.
Yeah, good to find these now.
Yeah, that's a struggle sometimes, because it'll automatically number it, and then it will stop because you cut and pasted or whatever.
And we
then-
took
yeah.
something out, and
Yeah.
and so it didn't renumber. Yes.
And most of this is statutory language.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty
So
much
all
what we
those will
want.
read 120.01 dot 1 through 10, basically, on that page?
Yes.
Enforcement
Page
section.
three.
I think it'll be 1 through
It's
9.
enforcement
1
block.
through 9,
So
just
be-
because we.
It'll
missed
be
one.
1 through 9
Yeah.
because of the numbering. Our old did not have the state community university in the town of Litchfield. We don't issue permits, but it's nice if we have that in there.
Sure.
Because that's what we.
No harm.
That is erected.
So is there a requirement that those entities, like obviously the state, but do those, is there state code that says those other entities shall not have the town inspectors grant the permits?
Yeah, they're exempt.
Should we also, for that one, also list all exempt entities to make it so it's not restricted to just this list?
I believe that's the list out of the statute.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
That's
So
the
we could
list
just
in the,
reference
that's
statute.
the
Yeah.
list in the statute.
So instead of having the list explicitly defined, we could just reference statute. That way, if that list in statute changes, we don't have to come back and rework this.
And if we do want to keep the list here, we should also say, or other state exempt entities, or something like that, so that if some new entity comes by
Yeah.
and we haven't updated yet, it's not.
That's in RSA 676. I think it's in that. Section 11 through 13. And we could just reference that, but it's really anything that's state, the university, the community college, and the town. I mean, it's,
Right.
Yeah, I would probably just add or other state exempt entities.
Other entities as determined exempt by state statute, something
could,
like that.
yep. Or other. Say that again.
Other exempt entities as defined by, and then lists. the-
State statute.
State statute.
Sure.
So, the only thing I will say is 120.02.12. That has been in, that was in our existing code. And to my knowledge, because everything that goes to the Board of Selectmen generally goes through my office to the Board of Selectmen, and I've never received one, so. And I know there have been violations. I know there's been code enforcement violations, and, so ideally, anything that goes to the ZBA is supposed to go to be copied to the Board of Selectmen.
So this is an internal process problem, right?
Yeah, and so we'll make that clear to the next building inspector. This is really a document for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then more 5, 6, all of that is BOCA related. So it all comes out.
Yep.
And then you really get to the appeals, which we've talked about. And then the amendments. So this is where it got a little, because I asked our council, I said, we're stating that 25 or more voters may petition for an amendment to the building code, but the state adopts the building code. And they said, but that hasn't been removed. So that's a problem with the state.
So, would that be something,
So
like, if that happens?
if
would-
if the issue happens and we receive a petition warrant article, or you folks receive a petition warrant article, I guess we have an issue
Like, there would have to be like a legal review to make sure it doesn't conflict
with the state building code.
That's what would happen.
Yeah,
Because the same thing could happen with the zoning amendment. Technically, somebody could, you could get something petitioned that is not, legally valid. That's happened in a couple of towns I've worked with, and they've just either determined that it's advisory or that it can't take effect. Because it's clearly contradicting statutory requirements.
Yeah, should we, is it
So-
possible to add a language that explicitly states that it must not conflict with the state building codes, or else it will?
I don't think you want to do that, because even with other petition warrant articles, we never say, it has to be legally valid, or it goes on to the warrant. It may not be legally valid. And until it's voted on, that's when the legal issue comes into play. So you could have a warrant article be approved by the voters, and then be found not to be legally enforceable. I don't like the process, but that is the process. If a petition warrant article comes to the selectmen can't say it's not legal. They have to put it on the warrant, even though it could be voted in and then found not legally enforceable. I don't like it either, but I think it's,
That's a
I
long
think it's,
process to find
I
out that
think
it's
it's-
not viable.
but I think it lends to the New Hampshire way of allowing voters to have a voice. And, but I also don't think we're being helpful.
Yeah, hopefully they take the responsibility of getting it legally reviewed themselves, but we cannot do anything.
I always tell people you really should have it reviewed, because our council won't.
And we'd have to send it to the state review board, because any amendment has to go to the state review board before it can take effect. So that would be another step in the process too.
And so far, nothing has passed.
Nothing has
It's gone there.
It's because I want everybody to follow the state code.
Right. Yeah, I think
Yeah, you can only make it more strict.
yes, you can't be less stringent ever.
Even then.
Even that
they might
hasn't
say no.
passed. Yeah.
Like, let's just, for some crazy example, let's say someone petitioned that all doors have to be at least a certain width. I doubt that would conflict with something saying there's a maximum door width, but that would be stupid. But I would imagine that might be enforceable, because I'm assuming most of the codes are minimum widths, not maximum widths.
It's hard to say, because before the language was that you couldn't be less stringent, and that's no longer the language. So it's, who knows, right? But if
Right.
the intent is that everybody's following the same code, they may say no, even if it's, beyond the minimum, and we just don't know what they would say. But bottom line, the process is, you have to send it to them for their review and approval before it takes effect. It won't be effective unless they say yes. And all that could change for all we know, because this is a product of the legislature. They could decide. We could see a legislature come in a couple of years and say, we think towns ought to be able to set their own building codes. And then we're in a whole different place. You never know.
I did hear one issue, when I was speaking to a local building official, who served on the board, say that one of the things that they were looking at is training. So it was very difficult for the Building Official Association to provide training when there were all these different variations of codes. And so building inspectors, can change from municipality to municipality. And as they are trying to train, they're really making sure that they're covering everything, and that means codes need to be the same.
So our statewide code really helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, training is very important to hopefully prevent the need for appeals.
Yeah, and they do a great deal of the training. The state does.
So, from how I see it, other than the amendments we provided, the only other changes that we probably need are making sure all the numbers are good and looking for white space errors, because I see a few other places where two words are just right up against each other with nothing in between them. Or two spaces, so.
Yeah, with those amendments and a general clerical cleanup, I think we're ready to bring this forward.
Okay, so does someone want to make a motion?
Should we ask about the date, though?
We should ask about the date,
Oh, date. Where's the
the
date?
effective date.
Russ
The
happened
very,
to notice at the end
the very
that
final sentence on the very final page.
it says March 12th. Is that because
Should
it's
be
the day
March
after
March
Election
11th.
Day?
March 11.
March 11.
Like Election Day is March 11th, right?
Right.
So how,
So does it take effect on the 12th, or does it take effect?
On the 11th, if it passes.
Okay.
okay.
12, 11,
How,
12.
it's, I thought it was the day after because you don't even have a tally
Yeah,
until midnight
Right, you're
of the.
right.
well,
The way
okay, leave
this,
it
the way
12.
this reads is these codes shall take effect upon their passage on. So if they passed on the 11th.
Oh, you're right.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
right.
That
that's
should be
right.
the
It
11th.
should be the 11th.
Yeah.
Is a date required in that?
Just a-
Yes.
Passage period?
But actually,
If, upon
the
the
whole
passage.
sentence is
Yeah, what if we
mute
just-
because
They
the
push the
codes
date.
already are in effect.
Yeah.
Not in Litchfield, though.
Right.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
Well, state codes,
Then just say upon passage,
yeah.
Full stop.
and then I would change,
Date,
I would change the date in the footer.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that is, I mean, where it's just cleanup, it's already in effect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
upon passage works.
Okay.
I didn't know if there was a legal requirement to have a date certain specified in this, or if we can get away with just upon passage, period, full stop.
I don't know if there's a legal requirement. It's always good to know when something passes, but I do think in this case where it's already in effect,
Yeah, because it's a statewide
Yeah.
requirement.
for a zoning ordinance, I would want it in there because it matters. Even a day can matter, because people will rush in and file something. So it's-
So do we want to have it specify the date of the vote?
Because that date could change. Could have a snowstorm.
Yeah, I would just say leave,
That's a good
just,
point.
just change the footer, and the footer doesn't have a day, it just says March and the year, and then,
Yeah.
I'd say for
Yeah.
effective date, just say that they take effect upon
March
passage. and-
2020.
March 2025, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
And your naming convention?
what?
So 225 lit, that changes, 2010 changes to 2025.
Yeah.
What's the 2?
I don't know what the 2 is. I'm gonna guess that when this was done, it was the second draft. And so somebody was probably putting that was probably going in there because there were multiple drafts, and that denoted the second one, so I just get rid of that too.
Okay.
And say 2025.
And the 225 is the zoning ordinance? I don't know what the, number 225 LIT.
NRPC's account number for Litchfield, maybe?
I don't even remember what it would be. I think that was,
I couldn't find it.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know where that specific, that one came from. I think it's a legacy.
Take it out.
I think it's a legacy from an older numbering system. I just take it out.
Okay.
Now, once passed, how long will it take for us to get this on the website? Because it's not been on the website anywhere that I could find.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed.
I'd keep the, BC ord dot, I keep that, so just, because that's
Okay.
telling you it's the building code, but the rest of it you don't need.
Okay. So my understanding, Joan, correct me if I'm wrong, is we update all these at the same time, right? There's a disc that comes over with all the language, and then that's given to IT.
Yeah, I get a copy, and John copies it.
And then they all get changed. No idea what happened to 170. We could not find it. Joan and I looked back on discs that were given. So 1988. I don't know, something was happening in 1988.
It was much different back then.
Dumb
There were. There probably wasn't a disc. Right, probably not.
No,
Right.
2007, we were looking at 2007.
There weren't that many other changes that year, right? So it could be that there really wasn't. Oh no, there was another change to the zoning ordinance.
In 1988,
Hmm.
fee schedule.
There were a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, fee schedule and ZBA as the Board of Appeals in 88. You look at just the building code changes. It's a change in 90 and a big change in 96.
Setbacks,
That's where all the BOCA came from.
yeah.
Setbacks are part of the zoning, not.
That's
the
why
building.
96 is still in the footer, probably. It was a big year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a big year. That was when BOCA got introduced into the code. And I couldn't find any changes beyond that.
Yes, I couldn't either.
I began my search in 1984, where I found nothing of.
So, in the section where we have, this code supplants and replaces under, section 100, that's what legal said, you have to have that language in there. And so that's why we had to go back and find every iteration of so we found 84, 96, 88, 90, and 96.
Didn't find anything of consequence in 84. I found 86, 88, 90, and 96.
Yeah.
That's just from an afternoon hanging out at the library. They keep the town reports in the attic. I asked the librarian to bring a few down for me. And then once I had a general feel for what I was looking at, then I went to the UNH website and pulled the soft copies and started doing word searches in those.
It's actually very interesting.
I was gonna say, we all have
To
different
read
ideas
the
of
old-
what's fun.
Yeah.
I know, but it really,
I was gonna say, it's Friday night, 7:30, and I don't know about you, but that's exactly what I was wondering.
Danger here is these old town reports have a lot of great information about how the town has developed over time.
Yeah.
You can get caught in a really deep rabbit hole once you start reading a town report. Because then you want to read the next year's report to see what happened next.
It's like a mystery.
but there, I mean,
I've
so
got-
at least
Got a folder full of town reports now.
on the,
I guess
you know, when it comes to like financial articles, and I'm not sure if the planning and zoning side has this, but when it comes to something that deals with the Board of Selectmen, and any statute under their authority or any statute under municipal finance, there's what they call your permanent file that is kept by the DRA. Twice since I've been here, and I only came in 22, we have found that it wasn't listed, that it was adopted on our permanent file with the DRA, and we've had to go through the town reports to find it and actually send it. So it happens all the time.
That's why
You
keeping
just-
all those town reports is so important.
It really is. Yeah, that's
So,
Anything else?
so one last thing regarding the appeals process is where would it be documented that specifies where the average homeowner, let's say, the average non-professional would look to find out how to appeal when this is done?
Idea.
Because they won't know if there's a board of appeals. They won't know much about the ZBA or anything like that.
so to Russ's point on our website, right? So we will get this on our website. We are trying very hard to get everything up on the website and point everyone to the website. I think you're much better if you go to a website and you read it in written than talking and you know. So
Good chance I'll call Joan or Kevin or him.
The professionals. All right,
Good night.
Thank you,
Bye, Kevin.
the same.
Okay.
So, look, will there likely be a section in the building department section of the website?
There is a building.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a section. Is there
Yeah.
a section that defines appeals or will define appeals?
So you know, I think we'd reference this document and tell people to go and read this document. Look at the building code on the town website. And in that is a section on appeals. You're just always pointing people to the same
And
document.
then they would go to the building inspector and say, what do I do?
Yeah, and he's gonna have a copy of this.
He would
and
know
he's
there's
gonna-
no Board of Appeals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably better to reference the whole document rather than piecemeal, like pulling out just the appeal process.
Right.
Rather to give more information than not enough, right? And they can see, oh.
Right, because then this gets updated or changed somehow, and you
Yeah,
gotta
there-
remember that there's another section on the website that
Right.
you just always point to.
Yeah, we need to be careful about pointing to a specific document, because if that document changes, we have to make sure that all links point to the same revision.
Yes.
But I do think it's going to be important to make sure that the building department section of the website links to this document.
Definitely.
Because that's where people are going to be
Definitely.
looking for it, not the planning board website.
Right. But somewhere on the website where it's not there currently.
And we've got a long ways to go with that website. I mean,
It's come a
We're-
long way, though.
it
It's
has.
really good. There's
It-
still more to fill it out.
Yeah, it's been
Always.
a lot of work by a lot of staff, but light years away from where we were, just because of the format of the old website was just
WordPress is very limited.
word, yeah. So, but we're all getting used to it, and in our spare time, which is none.
But, the old WordPress site was an improvement from the previous site before that.
Was there one?
No, there wasn't one before that.
There was a bare HTML site.
A what?
Just a bare site built up, litchfield.mv.com,
Oh.
a long time ago.
So I thank you very
Well,
much.
process-wise, though, I don't think we voted.
Well, right, we got.
I think we have
So
a
if there's
motion.
not, is there any more questions from the
I
board?
think, Russ, you made a motion, right?
I have not made a motion
Oh,
yet.
then we don't have a motion. Never mind.
Right. So I make a motion that we take this to public hearing as amended.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Russ, I have a second by Jared. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of moving this to public hearing as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, abstained. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, 0. Okay, it's going to public hearing.
Nice.
It was a very productive discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, it was good to have everyone here to work through the questions.
Actually,
Absolutely.
just a point of order, we should state what the vote for we should have put in the date for the hearing.
Yeah, I thought
January
about January
21st.
Yeah, so it's January 21st.
Oh, yeah, my
Yes.
apologies.
No, it's, I just want to clarify that.
The
so-
public hearing was
Time and date
21st.
certain.
Yeah.
So presumably the mover and the seconder agree to the amendment.
Do you agree with it?
Yes,
So-
I agree with it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed, abstain.
I could re-motion it if we need to.
6-0.
I think we're good.
All right. Well, I guess, that concludes
Sorry, business?
business.
I do have one question regarding just a thought I had in the last meeting regarding the other regulations that we're updating or we're proposing. For certain things like we're adding like inns and bed and breakfast. Are we gonna have definitions for an inn and a definition for a bed and breakfast?
I thought about that, not this year,
You can do that afterwards, right?
right, because that would be an amendment to the zoning ordinance
But there's already definitions in the zoning ordinance.
for both of those terms.
I'm pretty sure.
Double check.
Unless I'm remembering different town, I mean,
We'll have to double check.
zoning ordinances for multiple towns every day of the week, so.
I got confused too.
Are we
I
not?
don't remember.
Failing me, but-
I don't remember seeing definitions. We do talk about bed and breakfast, hotels. Hotel actually comes up in the southern commercial zone, but there's no like definition of between the three. So I think that would be
So
something
it
useful
would
to think
probably be in
about.
our best interest to define.
It would, we'd probably, I mean, at this point, we really can't this year
Sure.
because it's an amendment to the ordinance, but what probably would be, so at this point, it would be common usage, but it's probably prudent for us to do that for next year, but also anything else that we haven't defined, because I suspect that if you look at our lists of permitted uses, there's probably multiple things that we don't have a definition for.
Yeah, because that can cause problems for sure.
It can,
Like saying, "Oh, this is an inn." Oh, no, it's not.
yeah. Right? What's a hotel? What's an inn?
Yeah.
What's a motel? Yeah,
Too many gray areas.
would agree. That's probably something to work on for next year.
Okay. Fortunately, we can't get it in now.
Okay. Anything else? Any other business this evening?
No, but if you get a chance to read the Old Town reports,
We'll be at the library tomorrow.
Russ, was
Hang
the
out.
paper yellow?
We'll have a book club.
Yeah,
The book
paper
club,
is
yeah.
yellow.
We
And
can
we used
start
to
a
have
book
pictures
club.
too on the cover.
yeah,
Well, I want to,
and some good stuff in here. Our town in 1985, summary of what was going on. Circumferential highway, utility expanded, threat thwarted. Landfill still open, shocking disclosure. A lost home. Whoever wrote this was
Really getting into that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hijack.
no.
This is good
I was
stuff.
gonna say, I was gonna make a motion to adjourn, but
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
I can share copies. Yes.
So if you'd like to make a motion, you can certainly do so.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn for the evening.
Okay, and do we have a second to
I'll
that?
second
We
that.
have a second to that. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 600. Thank you for joining us this evening, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on the 21st.